This is Dance As Us, a series of podcasts produced and presented by Sveen Malta during the COVID-19 crisis. The letters making up the Sveen Malta name are the starting point for the 9 themes being presented over 9 weeks. The program aims to highlight the myriad ways dance features in our lives, reminding us that everyone has a relationship with movement and everyone has an experience of dance. It's also been a great opportunity to draw on the opinions, ideas and perspectives of the many voices in our cultural ecology. We've been talking to dancers and choreographers, as well as artists working in other disciplines, policymakers, curators, writers, directors and thinkers. This week, it's the letter A, so we're exploring A for art. We're extending our discussions around dance, movement and the body to the realm of contemporary art. Dance emerged as an art form in the mid-20th century and has since not only firmly claimed its place in an ever-expanding field, but also become an important point of reference in curating and creating visual and performance-based art. This week, we're shining a spotlight on dance artists and choreographers and opening up a broader discussion of contemporary art in Malta. So to begin that discussion, our first guest is Margerita Pulè, who's an artist, writer and programmer. She's also the founder of an independent organisation titled Unfinished Art Space, and she edits Malta's quarterly contemporary art publication, ArtPaper. Margerita's own practice attempts to exist outside the conventional structure and aesthetic of the exhibition space, and seeks to interact and gain meaning through other modes of existence, such as interventions and temporal events. So after that long introduction, Margerita, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Margerita, I'm beginning each interview with the same question, which is, tell me your earliest or most vivid experience of dance.
I can't believe I'm going to tell you this story from the deepest depths of my past. So I will begin with a disclaimer. I'm not a dance or physical person in that sense, and I am in awe of people who can dance and move their bodies and even have rhythm, because it's something that I'm really not able to do. But when I was 6 or 7, I did go to the Signet School of Ballet, like many young girls. And I remember I really have this memory. We had a performance in the local school, and we were all dolls. We had to bring our favorite doll. That was part of the performance, and we had to sort of we had this dance with these dolls. My favorite doll, was a gollywog at that stage, and I was dressed up with a lovely waistcoat, orange waistcoat. I really remember it, and frills. And there was a part of the performance where we had to sort of take the life from the doll and all walk around to the left and go to the front of the stage. Everybody did that except me. I, for some reason, went the other way, and apparently my parents were mortified, and I didn't go back to the Signet School of Ballet. So I don't know if that's some kind of, well, I'd like to think it was a spirit of independence. It could be just the spirit of uncoordination, but that's really a really early memory I have, where I just went, oh, okay, I wasn't supposed to do that. That's okay. And I didn't go back to ballet school after that.
And that was that. You're my second guest who's described their dance or their experience with movement as literally not knowing their left from their right.
Yeah. I was blissfully unaware, so I can't say it was a traumatic event. I was happy. I thought I was great. You know, I really remember. I remember my costume and everything. But afterwards, I think in retrospect, I sort of went, oh, that's why my mum didn't send me back.
Okay, so you went on to excel at other things. Tell us about where you grew up, your aspirations, and what drew you to this career in the arts.
Okay, I grew up in the suburbs of Dublin, in southern suburbs of Dublin, on the foothills of the Wicklow Mountains. Very, I don't know, normal, I suppose, somewhere between, I guess, middle class existence, you know, with semi-detached housing estates and lots of rain in Dublin. What drew me to a career in the arts? I don't know exactly, but I always know that it was what I wanted to do. The answer, you know, why was always I don't want to do anything else. I don't know if I always understood it as a career. For example, when I imagine, like a lot of young people, I didn't necessarily know what a programmer was or what a curator was or things like this. But it was, I want to go to art college. That's what I want to do. I don't want to do anything else.
And but what were your aspirations in that sense as a child? What did that look like for you?
I suppose I wanted to be an artist, and I don't know if I knew what that looked like or what that would be. I mean, I didn't, even in my parents' social circle, there weren't artists per se, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. Maybe if I don't know, again, I mean, I'm sure it's not unusual, but maybe if I had more contact with artists and arts professionals at the time, I would have maybe arrived at some points quicker. I don't know, but that's that's what I wanted to do from a very young age. I was always drawing. When I was young, I was drawing always non-stop, painting, drawing, and even into, I don't do it so much anymore, unfortunately. But that's what I did in my spare time. Anytime I had, I would just be drawing.
And so when you finished school, you went directly to art school, I assume.
Yeah, long story. I went to University College Dublin for a while, but then I went to the National College of Art and Design in Dublin,
Mm-hmm.
which is an amazing place, and I have really good memories of it. And it's looking back now, it's such a luxury, to spend 4 years with a studio, with materials there, with equipment there, with the teachers, and like most students, I guess I sort of swung between making the most of the opportunities and working hard and trying to learn as much as I could, but swinging between that and having a good time as well, and just being a student. So I'm really, really lucky to have gone there. It's a great place, but I think our college in general, it's a great time, to sort of think about the world, and also to have that support, the studio, the equipment. I studied glass design, or craft design, glass casting. Mm-hmm. So the kilns were there, the furnace was there, we had glass, we had 40% lead crystal from Waterford crystal, so it was a really luxury, I guess, that you don't appreciate at the time, but it was a really good time.
And so then, I mean, working with glass, it's a very specific thing, and you need access to a well-equipped workshop, of course. So mm-hmm. When you came back to Malta, I mean, at what point did you start sort of becoming more interested in working as a curator and a programmer, and where did you leave behind this idea of this notion of being a glass artist?
Mm-hmm. I guess in a contemporary context, to say that you're a glass artist is a little bit limiting. I still love glass, and I think glass artists do amazing stuff, amazing things with glass, but it's a bit limiting to just say, I'm only going to work in glass. In a contemporary art context, you could work in anything, or you could work with other artists that know how to, or technicians who know different materials. So I think I started moving away from that sort of limitation quite soon after. I mean, there was a period in my life when I didn't practice much as well, so there wasn't a sort of a direct transition maybe. But when I moved to Malta in 2000, and I have to remember what years my children were born, and it's not always easy. I guess in 2006, a few years later, I did a master's in fine arts at the University of Malta, which was much more contemporary based, and really, really moved me completely away from other materials I get, or from one specific material.
Yeah. And then you began working with the Valletta 2018 Foundation.
Yeah, I worked with Valletta 2018, wow, from I think about 2013 to 2017. And I have to say, I mean, roller coaster ride, but I wouldn't change it. I learned so much and met so many amazing artists, Maltese and international, and so saw so much of how programming works, and we met some world famous curators, world famous artists. I got such a crash course in everything there, from dealing with the European Commission to dealing with to working on like socially engaged projects with 5 participants, to I don't know, applying for Creative Europe projects again, to working with the National Theatre, the National Dance Company as well. I worked there for a few years, and really learned a lot. At that time, I was doing my master's as well in fine art, and when I look back, I can't believe I did that. And I have 2 kids as well, so it was quite an intense time. I can't imagine working like that or living like that again. Actually, it was really intense time, and everyone I think who works in a capital of culture says it's really a really intense time in their lives.
Yeah, but like you say, it's laid some very solid ground foundations for your career. These days, it's really not uncommon for artists and freelancers working in our field to self-ascribe many job titles and roles. And for you, it's artist, writer, and programmer. So can you just describe briefly these roles and how they exist discreetly and also overlap?
Yeah, I didn't even think historically. I think even artists have always worked. It's probably quite rare to have an artist that works only exclusively as an artist, because for one thing, you always want to express yourself. So, I mean, for me, writing, I really enjoy writing. So it's sort of a natural thing to do that alongside using other media, say. And programming, I think I caught the programming / curating buzz with the Capital of Culture. And I really love it. I really love introducing artists to each other and putting works together and putting a program together. It was something I didn't know I would like so much, and I really missed it afterwards, when I stopped. And I really missed that sort of buzz of like, getting people together and like, I don't know, putting something on, I guess. So, and they're not exclusive, you don't have to just be, I mean, for a while, I think in contemporary art, there was this sort of a figure of the curator that was sort of all seeing, all knowing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, in last years, artists have started again, let's say, to curate themselves or to curate each other's work. So I think it's kind of a natural. It makes sense to do something like that. And I always felt as a programmer, or let's say maybe working on the office side, or even in admin, on an arts admin, it's so important to know what the artist is going through. So to know the creative process, and to know, from practical things of why is an artist, obviously, want their contract closed. Why are they so worried about certain things? Why are they short of cash? Why is this particular item or this particular color so important to the artist? I think that's so important that when you work in arts admin as well, or programming, that you have that experience of working as an artist as well. So you see the process from many different sides.
Yeah, it's always helpful to have that insider's view. There's no doubt about that. Can you tell me, with Unfinished Art Space, what's your goal with that organisation? What's your vision or mission?
Yeah, I mean, when in your introduction, you sort of remind me of this sort of vision of working in spaces with I don't want to say unconventional. It sounds a little bit like I don't know, but to work. Let me put it another way. Sometimes I don't know, even as somebody who has studied contemporary art, I have like a master's in fine art. Sometimes when I go into an exhibition, I feel it's quite, sometimes it can be, a white wall space or whatever. It's quite static. It's quite, cold. It's not an inviting maybe space unintentionally. And I just feel, now you go into a gallery, you put your serious gallery face on, you look at the art, you have serious thoughts about the art. And I wanted to somehow move away from that sort of, let's say, formulaic or overly self-conscious sort of model, let's say. And so I started working. I'd already done a couple of projects outside, even in the street, and I just wanted to try to use, to use different spaces, to use spaces in different ways. I mean, it's not a new thing. It's not revolutionary. It's been done all over the world and in Malta as well. But I wanted to see, how we could use different spaces, and also to provide. When we set up, I mean, there are a few initiatives, but I mean, I think there is a lack in Malta of, let's say, opportunities, platforms for artists to experiment, to do things that may or may not work, to do sort of low budget things. So I really wanted to sort of put that back on the table, let's say, after a few things had been done in the run up, a few projects. I mean, everybody knows Fragmenta Malta, for example, had done this kind of experimentational programming, and there were some Utopian Nights projects as well that worked on a similar idea. But I really wanted to sort of bring this, to bring this out in Malta again, because I don't think anybody else is doing something like that on a long-term basis. Mm-hmm. I mean, we should now be preparing for a show with Adrian Abel on the 1st of May, but that unfortunately, due to, this is the phrase, isn't it? Due to current circumstances, that got postponed or delayed or cancelled because he couldn't come to Malta because he lives in LA, and we had a few other projects coming up that are now on hold. So we'll see what happens. I haven't gone down the road of sort of moving online, because I think that's something, I don't know, that needs a lot of thought and isn't necessarily for everyone. So I haven't done that yet, but we'll see what happens in the coming weeks.
What is there a project you're working towards at the moment that you can speak about in terms of unfinished art space?
I don't know. I just don't know when anything is happening. I think it's so interesting how arts, or let's say art in general, artists are always supposed to be a little bit, dissident or beyond, maybe beyond the palest, or to be disobedient. But now with this, with the pandemic, everybody is so obedient, and obviously, I don't know. It's like you can't. It's not like you can't. Let's say, as maybe a contemporary artist or a political artist, you could rage against an unjust regime, or rage against I don't know, the politics or certain situations in your country, but you can't really rage against a virus. It doesn't really make sense in a way to sort of to work against it in the same way. I don't know if that makes sense as an artist. So I think we're just going to wait and see what happens. I mean, I know some artists are sort of working on their experiences, where interpreting what's happening, or talking, making work about being in confinement or being at home, and this. But it's we'll wait and see what happens.
So, as editor of ArtPaper and founder of Unfinished Art Space, I would say you probably got your finger on the pulse of Malta's contemporary art scene. So I'm just wondering how you've seen it evolve in the time since you've started this work since you started with the Letter 2018 Foundation up to now.
I don't know. I mean, what do you think yourself as well? Because I think maybe it's matured a little bit, the art scene. Talking about contemporary art or visual art, let's say. I think it's matured a little bit. And maybe, I mean, with a big disclaimer as well, that I wasn't here in the 80s and 90s when Start was happening, when all those artists were working together, and when there was the Malta Contemporary Art in Marsa as well. So I think that was, they were really important projects in the development of Maltese contemporary art. But I think in the last 10 years, I think artists have maybe become more serious and more, career oriented. I mean, in terms of their practice, so more sort of practice based, more research based. in terms of also structures to work for artists to there is also some more funding. There's also the fine arts course in university in contemporary art and the faculty of knowledge sciences. So I think there are, I think the scene is more, let's say, serious. I don't know if you would agree with that.
I think, yes, I would. It's, when I moved here, when I started and set up Blitz with Alexandra Patch, one of the things that was really commonly heard and expressed was that contemporary art didn't really have a place yet in Malta. This was around 2013. So we've certainly seen it emerge and find a firm place in the culture here. It is written about more. I mean, ArtPaper is a good example of that.
A hunger for contemporary art. And I think, you mentioned Blitz. I think initiatives like Blitz, like Fragmenta Malta, I think they all sort of contributed to audiences being a little bit more knowledgeable, to appreciating the work of the artists more. There is the counter argument that says, because the funds are available, that artists are sort of more careful as well, because the funds come from the Arts Council or central government, that that artists sort of apply for funding, and if they don't get the funding, they don't necessarily do a project. And also, too, that artists are a little bit more careful about what they do and what they say. I don't know if those arguments, I don't know if they're 100% justified. Because the artists can't always be sort of struggling without any. It would be a poor shadow of a country that didn't that had no funding for the arts at all. It would be a sort of not a very good way to go either. So I don't know, but I do think contemporary art has gone quite a long way in 10 years in Malta.
Certainly in terms of Spin Malta as well, that was established 5 years ago as the country's first contemporary dance company, which is also quite a big achievement.
And I think ownership as well. I think I don't know, but obviously I'm not involved sort of closely with Spin Malta, but I think there is a sense of this is our national dance company and a sense of ownership of it, because I think people there were already dance audiences, but maybe they weren't so aware of contemporary dance. So maybe they weren't so sort of I don't know, maybe now there's sort of an ownership of this sort of national, really, really high quality company, I think
so as well. As an artist and curator, performance features heavily in your work. So your own performances involve a lot of ceremony and activism, drama and humour. I'm just wondering, can you talk a little about your relationship with performance art? So moving away from the performing arts, as a performer, I would say that your own practice, is quite aligned with being a performance artist.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, because I'm definitely not a performer in the sense of a stage, as I said, or stage or performer. But I think it just sometimes it seems to be the only way that you can express something. I don't know if that makes sense, but again, linking with media and different, why would you only work in glass, for example? But sometimes when you're thinking about something, when you're thinking about a problem or something you want to say, it seems that, performing it is the only way that you can say that thing in that exact particular way. So, for example, when I did the cement truck procession, where we walked slowly in front of a cement truck along Tower Road, that was a sort of a statement against overbuilding, over construction and the construction industry. But at no point did we ever, or in the performance, at no point did anyone actually say you know, stop the construction. So it was sort of a take on demonstrations. It was also a take on processions in terms of religious processions and sort of deifying the construction industry. It was also great fun because people didn't know what to make of it. People thought is it a procession? Is it a protest? The police turned up with like 10 motorbikes because they thought there was going to be a big protest. So I think in terms of performance, sometimes that sort of, let's say, time-based in a way, time-based work is the only way that you can say what you want to say. There was another work I did recently called Daily Bread, where it was a more maybe interactive piece where people had to sort of, let's say, bribe the artist for different types of bread. So depending on what you would offer me, I would give you something either really, really nice, like a really nice piece of cake, or else like a piece of stale bread or something like this, which was great fun as well because there's this interaction with the audience. You know, you don't know exactly quite what's going to happen, and in different situations as well, it works really differently. So in some situations, when I did it, maybe when we did the performance with the Gabriel Caruana Foundation, there was a certain kind of audience there that maybe knew what they were supposed to do. They knew this is performance art. Okay, let's do this. And also I knew some of them, and I was offered, people brought things with them on purpose to offer the artist, let's say. So one guy brought a passport, one guy, you know, somebody offered a poem, somebody offered some money, somebody even gave me a baby through the window, which was great fun. But then when I performed it at the stock exchange, for example, it was a very, very different kind of audience. So they really didn't know until they'd had a few drinks. They didn't really know what to make of it at all. And then they started sort of joking and offering, you know, offering things and getting the joke. So there's kind of you know, it's a way to sort of say what you want to say, but there's also this element of fun as well, and a sort of the element of you don't know exactly what's going to happen.
And your performance work, naturally it involves people, and the work projects you're describing are very collaborative and they involve a lot of other people. But the other medium that you work with quite a lot is photography. And you almost obsessively document public and private spaces through your lens. And here, the human body, to me, from my experience of your work, is always absent. Is this intentional? What's going on here?
No, it's not intentional, I don't think. I mean, the public and private spaces in Malta was a project that I still sort of have in my head. It was I was taking photographs of buildings that are being knocked down, again linked, I guess, with the construction industry. But it was a project where I was looking at where a building is knocked down, and you can see the insides literally. So you can see, you know, the shower head still hanging on the wall, or there's one that's still there. I think 2 years later, there's the fan, like the ceiling fan, is still hanging off a beam and still turning in the open wind, and the building side is just left empty. You know, so you see these sort of intimacies of people's lives. You see like a little girl's wallpaper, or, you know, the tiles of the kitchen, or you know, the fuse box is still there on the wall, but the building is gone. So no, the absence of the human body wasn't intentional. It's just that's sort of what I was preoccupied with at the time, I think.
Okay. And Margerita, what's your experience of contemporary dance, past or present? How have you engaged with it? What does contemporary dance mean for you?
Well, do we go back in a circle to my first story? That wasn't.
Well, we've got these very early stories, so we could.
No, but I think I don't know. Again, because I'm not a dancer, I'm really in awe of this process and the sort of you know, what people can do, not with their bodies in a sense, in a sort of you know, I don't know, acrobatic sense, but what you can, you know, the strength or the emotion or what you can do with a performance. I mean, I remember I was lucky enough to see in Brussels, to see a rehearsal of Ultima Ves, one of their performances, and it was a rehearsal. So, you know, they were in their studios. I think they had part of their costumes. You know, no light, no whatever sound from, I guess, a CD player or whatever. But it was one of the strongest, one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. You know, it was just, they were so strong. These, I think it was all male dancers, and it was just amazing. And you just think, wow, like what, you know, one, as I was there, I just thought how lucky I am to see this, you know. And maybe as well because they were rehearsing and it wasn't a performance, it was even more sort of intimate in that sense. But you see these things, and you can't say they change your life, but they do something at that moment. You feel something, you know, you feel a connection either with the dancers or with the, maybe unconsciously you don't know, oh, I feel something with the choreographer and the director and the lights designer, but you know, the whole thing comes together, and you just go, you know, wow. I don't know if that's my experience of contemporary dance. I'm not hugely knowledgeable either about contemporary dance, but I do know, you know, there are a few performances that I've been lucky enough to see, and that I have really just gone like, you know, oh wow.
Margerita, thank you so much. It's been great talking
Thank you.
and getting an insight into your practice.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the invitation.